From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to SBI TV, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today we're going to discuss a very interesting and a very hot topic all around culture. So how a CEO specifically can establish new forms of communication that not only drive the culture, but deliver continuous improvement. I'm your host, Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI. Joining me today in the studio is Nestor Benavides, who is the CEO of EMG, which is a Bureau Veritas company. So, Nestor, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. So I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience, a little bit about your background, but also talk a little bit about what EMG does and how the audience should think about you guys.
Absolutely. I was born in Lima, Peru. Got a mechanical engineering degree from the University of Maryland. And I started out my first half of my career with Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati in engineering and manufacturing and sales and in marketing.
Did it all.
Did two different startups and ended up at EMG 13 years ago. We have EMG provides front-end services. We help people that own lots of properties and lots of facilities make and execute decisions on their properties. We've grown from $14 million to $100 million in the last 9 years. And we were fortunate to become part of the Bureau Veritas family just under a year ago.
Wow. And how should the audience, so becoming part of the Bureau Veritas family, what did that look like and what is Bureau Veritas for those who might not know?
So Bureau Veritas is a 200-year-old company, a $5 billion global company that's very well known outside of the United States, outside North America. It started by helping businesses trust businesses back in the time where ships started moving between countries. They don't have a big presence in North America, and they acquired EMG in order to develop a building and infrastructure division within North America.
Yep. Great. All right. So if you're watching the show or you're listening and you don't want to miss out on our weekly content, if you want to access our library, all you have to do is download the SBI app. That's pretty easy. Just go to the Apple Store, search for Sales Benchmark Index, and then you can use your iPhone and get your notifications. And people like Nestor and I can keep you company when you're working out, when you're traveling, or when you're on your commute. So let's jump into the questions. So this first segment, Nestor and I are going to talk about achieving clarity with the executive team. And then one of the reasons why is that if you think about where management teams break down, lack of clarity on strategic direction, strategic decisions, just the overall process of achieving consensus is really difficult. So Nestor, in our work and specifically the time I spend with the CEO and his or her direct reports, I will tell you consensus is the thing that holds people back from making the gains. They understand the strategy and they go, yes, but they can't seem to get consensus, why, when, how, who, and things break down. You have a unique point of view, so I am ready to listen and learn just like the audience.
I'm not sure how unique it is, but it's worked for us. I think that first thing is accepting that strategy and culture and planning is it's a fluid thing, and it becomes clearer and clearer through dialogue, through conversation, through living it. I think as CEO, it's our responsibility to champion that conversation, to create it, to document it, right? To make it explicit and not to try to make it perfect, not to try to put it in big corporate words, but to speak to it in a way that makes sense to you, and then to repeat it, not as a broken record, but to repeat it in helping people understand how it applies to different business situations, to different client situations, so that it starts to come to life. And then probably the hardest part is allowing people then to translate it into their own words, and to make it their own, and then to start, as long as they're pushing in the same direction, it doesn't matter if they use different words to describe it.
So when you think about the alignment and you think about the direct reports of the CEO, and at times, and I've learned this the hard way in this role, even though you think you're speaking in 12-point font, it comes across that it's in 36-point font because of the role. And it's not anything that one of us is doing. How do you mobilize your directs to ensure that they feel heard and they feel empowered, and that it's a we thing, not a you thing, and you're bringing them along for the ride? Because many of the CEOs watching this struggle with that, present company included.
Me as well. I think that it's very little to do. It has very little to do with what you say. It has some to do with what you do, but it has mostly to do with what you believe, with who you are. I don't believe that I'm any more important than anybody else in the company. I just play a different role on the team. And I think people know what you believe and what you value, despite what you may say. Yep. And I think if you can start from there, I'm in awe of my team, of my colleagues, of everybody in the company for their dedication, for their competence, and I make it a point to share that with them. Yep. And I find it's easier for me to help to make people feel valued. I think one of the other challenges as a CEO is actually to make people value people. And to me, it's about starting from respecting people's intention, yep, knowing that their heart is working to do the right thing, appreciating their contribution, yep, and then dealing with the disagreements. If you focus on the disagreements, then it's hard to convey value. If you start with respecting their intention and appreciating their contribution, then it gives you a lot of space to discuss disagreement.
How have you evolved? So I love that term, respecting intention. How have you evolved your style over the years so that the team actually feels like it? You respect the intention that creates an environment where it's okay to make mistakes.
Well, I know where I haven't done it enough. Some people say I take up a lot of space in the room, right? I think that it's hardest when we're passionate about something, yeah, to sit back and listen, right? And so I think I'm more aware of the fact that I need to give people space in the conversation. And when I don't, it's not because I don't value them. It's only because I'm so passionate about what I believe. But I'm a work in progress in that regard.
So I guess first takeaway out of segment one, when you can have the level of humility that Nestor can have being a CEO and having the success you've had, that says something about how you mobilize and create that environment. So before we jump into segment two, very often, I'm asked about our space here in Dallas and people coming to the studio to get access to benchmarking data, access to best practices. How might you do that? So you'll see on the screen right now the ability to reach out to Melissa, who runs the studio here, and she can ensure that you or your team are treated to an experience, whether it's working with one of our subject matter experts on pricing or marketing or coverage or analytics, or just dropping by to benchmark yourself against a set of peers and spend some time together and say hello to myself. So if you're interested in doing that and you're coming through Dallas, we'd love to see you here. We've got a neat location. Worst case scenario, I got a bar in my office, and we can sit back and have a drink. So segment two, Nestor and I are going to talk a little bit about separating fact and fiction as you sit and you run the business. So if you think about a CEO and the role of managing the internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, very, very difficult. And then using those inputs, Nestor, to plot the course for the company. I always think, one of my mentors told me a long time ago, the CEO's number one job is to make investment decisions. Investments of human capital and investments of cash, right? Real capital. That's your number one job. So how to make good decisions and process information, separate fact and fiction, is a critical skill being a CEO. Talk a little bit about that from your vantage point.
So I think that that is the question, right? Because I think to the extent that you can separate truth from fiction, you can make good decisions, make good investments, and drive the company forward. I love the quote from Julio Olaya, who's a professional coach. He says, wisdom is a love affair with questions. Knowledge is a love affair with answers. I think to explore the situation and discover truth, you have to be, it's a combination of humility and curiosity. Yep. You have to ask questions with humility and with curiosity. I think because you may be the CEO or the executive vice president of sales, you sometimes feel like you should know the answers. or maybe you think you already do, but asking questions with humility, with an open mind, to really be interested in what is going to be said and what's really going on, I think is very. And often I'll ask a question that's an obvious question, and I'll find that there's 4 different answers around the table, and yet we all thought we knew what the answer was. So I think asking obvious questions, because ultimately I think discovering truth is not about figuring out the right answer. It's about understanding objectively a situation in the same way. And so through questions, you discover that.
That's great.
The second part is curiosity. I think that often, because we want to move to the next thing, we ask a couple of questions and we think we get that, so we move on. And I think as a leader, you have to dig a little deeper. You have to ask a little more than is obvious, because often I think the magic or the value to the solution is, 1 or 2 layers deeper than you usually go. And most people, I think, will, as soon as they have an answer, they want to move forward. They think they have the right answer. And again, to me, it's not about finding the right answer. It's about an objective understanding of the situation.
So, wisdom is a love affair with asking questions.
With questions. And this was, when I heard this, it was pivotal in my life.
Yeah.
Because I'd been looking for the answer my whole life. Like, what's the answer? What am I supposed to be about? And this gentleman says, in business, the questions are always the same. The answers change. And so if you're asking yourself the question constantly, and then you're acting on the answers that you hear, you steer it in the right way, but don't get committed to the answer. Get committed to the question and keep asking it. And that allows you to continue to steer.
Powerful. That's good. I feel like I just got a little therapy session, because I have a wicked bias for action. So my team will watch the show and they'll be like, hey, Matt, did you take Nestor's advice? All right, why don't you ask a couple more questions before you say go? All right, so hey, team, I got it. I guess my follow-up question to that is, if I think about drilling this down into selling and how salespeople spend their time, where they get stuck in the pipeline, why a sales leader misses the number. There's always this desire, because it's so measurable, right? To say, you were 94% of your number, you missed your forecast, we've got to sell more big deals, what's going on? So talk to me about how you have interacted with the sales organization as a CEO, because when you 7X a company, you can't do that if you don't grow revenue at the rate that you did. How do you create that environment where people feel that as the CEO?
So we have an amazing sales team, which has been what's gotten us to where we are in large part. But I think that trying through the conversation of where are we headed and why do we exist, trying to expand the conversations that they're having with the clients, not just about, and this is better than most, is it's not just about what I want to sell you, it's about where are you, what are you struggling with, what do you need? And I think sales often has a propensity to get the deal, move on, right? Don't oversell it. I think we often in the sales conversations don't spend enough time asking questions, discovering what the biggest opportunities are, what the biggest challenges are that the client has. So I think making more room up front, and then once you understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve, then introducing solutions. And then the second thing is, I think when you're authentically looking to solve a problem and understand objectively the situation, you cut out a lot of the nonsense, the small talk, and this kind of stuff that often I think gives sales a bad rap, right? You cut out the fluff and you actually start talking about real things and things that matter, and then hopefully real solutions.
Yep. So my last piece on this segment. How long did it take you to translate that feeling into the sales organization and your head of sales, where that relationship and probably transparency, vulnerability, because the typical persona of a sales leader is, I got it, boss, saying to you, right? Yeah. And the persona of the CEO is, don't trouble me with that, just don't miss your number, right? And I'm going to give you lots of runway. So how'd you create that?
So I don't think anything is ever fully created. I think it's fluid. So it's, it's a state of being that we need to continue to nurture and feed. And it's not that I imposed it on the sales organization. I think it's a symbiotic relationship. I'm trying to, influence their conversation with strategy and with purpose of the company and with additional thoughts, and they're influencing me to better understand, the balance that you need to have between that and moving forward. And so I think that there's mutual respect and a mutual influence that's going on, and it's fluid. We're evolving and maturing, hopefully day over day and month over month.
Great. All right, so we wrapped up that segment. Nestor and I are gonna finish off in the last segment. We're gonna talk a little bit about culture and the benefits of that. Many folks reach out to us and ask about being able to come in and participate and be a guest on the show. So if you believe that you've got a point of view as a CEO or a head of sales or a head of marketing, and you would like to join us here for filming the show, we'd love to hear from you. So reach out to Melissa. She will ensure that you and I get to have a conversation. We think about something that's meaningful that could impact our listeners and our viewers, because one of our missions is to ensure we drive people to reach their full potential. That's our purpose as a firm. So doing that is sharing best ideas, great ideas, and emerging ideas like those of Nestor, where the entire SBI community can benefit. So if you've got something interesting, we'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to meet you. So this last segment, we're going to talk about the benefits of a powerful and unique culture. And specifically, if you think about all the management writing and all the articles on the importance of building, sustaining, and advancing a corporate culture, but when you kind of inspect what these cultures have, oftentimes they might be thin, they might not be compelling, and the hard part is they're not adopted by the employees. Nestor, I like to say that when we walk into an organization and we do like a sales engagement sort of health check, like do a little health survey to get a baseline when a CEO like you says, hey, come tell us how we're doing. Very often we look at how activated the values are, the core values of the company. Is the sales organization running a sales culture, but then there's a company culture and the two aren't together? Or is part of the sales culture in the culture of the organization, and the values, the core values, are activated and they're visible and they're action-oriented? So with that as the backdrop, I'd love to hear your thoughts around culture and value activation. Where do you sit on that?
So I never really say the word culture out loud because I actually never work on culture. Yeah. To me, culture is the product, right? It's the result of hopefully having a clear strategy and an explicit set of values. Mm-hmm. So I try to be thoughtful of the people in the organization and deliver it with the values. So I think that one of the things I'm proudest of is when we have interviews, people come in for interviews, or people that come into the company fresh, and they say to me, I didn't know companies like this existed, right? I didn't know that I feel like everybody cares about me already. So honest and caring is above all, is our first core value, and I love that it really does come through. I think that we have 600 plus people. Yeah. They define the culture. Yeah. And there's certainly a different flavor on some level in the sales than there is in operations. Sure. And I think some of that is, is the nature of the kinds of people that flock to sales versus flock to operations. But I think the important thing is that there's this umbrella values that we're all aspiring to. And I think we fail often against those values, but we expect to be called out on it in a constructive way, and just kind of keep working towards it. But to me, culture is the result of living to our values. Yep. And I tell folks when they first join the company, I started getting comfortable with values when I started thinking about them as, this is what I want you to hold me to and other leaders of the company to. And through that experience, I hope that you also aspire to them yourself. Yeah. Because that is what we're trying to become. I think CEO doesn't create the culture. I think the CEO is a catalyst. I agree. For the culture. And so I try to aspire to it. I try to live up to it. And it's in every conversation, right? It's in every decision that we make. It's in every policy that we put out there. I think the key is to be constantly thoughtful. Yeah. I may be off
No, you're spot on. And you've had a chance to see our facility here and what we do.
It's awesome.
And that's kind of you to say. Having our values on the wall, and when we bring clients and prospects in and talking about our values and the 6 core values and our purpose as a way to hold us accountable. If you think about engaging us or you work with us, it's very different, right, than what you would typically see at a consulting firm. And one of the things we try to do is to be different versus better, because I think different is truly different. And I think better's on the margins. That's Matt's point of view. What I love about what you said is being a catalyst, right? As opposed to making there's always an element of shaping, but as the CEO being a culture catalyst, but you holding yourself accountable and having the employees hold you accountable to living the core values, that's fantastic. So my last question, and I love this topic, but we have to wrap up. If you think about this extension of the culture as you grow as fast as you have, how have you maintained it and allowed the growth to drive sort of cultural contribution, cultural growth as the company has gotten bigger? Because many of the folks watching this are in fast-growing companies, trying to grow faster, hiring people, onboarding people, et cetera. What's your thought on that?
So I think that fast growth is often a great catalyst for culture, right? For 2 reasons. First of all, everybody wants to be part of a winning team. And if you're growing, it means you're doing something right. And so inherently, I think there is a positive energy that comes from a company that's in growth mode. And the second part is you have this constant influx of people ready to try something new.
Yeah.
And so I meet with all of our new hires once a month, and I have an hour to 2 hour long conversation to just set the tone and start the conversation and set expectations of myself and what we're trying to do and be as a company.
Love that.
And over the last 3 years, through some attrition and through growth, we've probably hired 300 of our 600 employees. So I think it's alive. The organization is. So you're never done. It's never created. But I think growth is an easier place to drive culture than the alternative.
Truly is. Well, Nestor, I can't thank you enough for coming by. I mean,
thank you.
Great topic, and it was wonderful to hear your point of view. So what a wonderful gift you gave, and really happy to see you.
My pleasure.
Thanks. All right, so you got some deep insight. If you're a CEO and you're thinking about sustainability and you're thinking about growth, the foundation and some of the principles that Nestor just shared with us, you can take with you, and his track record speaks for himself. On behalf of the firm, SBI, and all of our employees and myself, I appreciate the fact that you took some time to tune in. You threw your eyes and ears on us, and you have a choice, and that means a lot to me. So until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.